What's up? Welcome in to the latest episode of Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting show. I'm Patrick Engel, joined by our recruiting insider, Mike Singer. It's Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. I'm sure a lot of you guys are still riding off of the Clemson win and all the euphoria from that. We're going to talk about it from a recruiting angle. Mike, you've been discussing this and talking to recruits about Notre Dame's big 47-40 double overtime win over number one Clemson. Had a couple of stories on that just with recruit reaction. But from your perspective here, what's been the biggest impact and from what you've sensed talking to some of these recruits after Notre Dame pulled this off?
Yeah, wow. Well, there's a ton to talk about there. I would say the first thing is if you're not subscribed to blueandgold.com, you need to be. The gold standard really covered this in depth, as well as Patrick mentioned recruit reaction. I think I heard from like 45, 50. I still have reaction coming in from today, which I'll post Tuesday night in Lucky Charms, my weekly or weekday night recruiting nuggets I post. So that's the first thing for Notre Dame fans. So if you are a subscriber, then you already know what's going on there. But in terms, so generally, there's a lot of different things, Patrick. You have some recruits who've reached out to me and have said, this doesn't change how I feel about Notre Dame because I already love Notre Dame. Like this doesn't really do much. I already thought that they were one of the best teams in the country. And then I have others who are of the mindset of, I didn't know Notre Dame was like this. And I think it's more of the recruits who are from more Notre Dame friendly areas, so the two I'm speaking of, the examples. One's Keith Miles Jr. He's from St. Peter's Prep in New Jersey. I think Notre Dame has three guys, the Adamola brothers and then Shane Simon. So
That's
that's a
right.
very New Jersey friendly area. He knows guys on the team. He knows the program very well. So that's kind of the reactions like, I already love Notre Dame. I already know Notre Dame so well. I already believed in them. And then you have a guy like Evan Stewart who's a Rivals 100 wide receiver. Both of these young men are in the 2022 class that I'm talking about. He's the one who was like, man, I didn't know Notre Dame was like this. Like, dang, like this put them on the map. I had a running back in Memphis, Dallin Hayden, said this win's going to attract a lot of recruits, and Notre Dame would love for him to be one of them. So, there's a lot of different thoughts from recruits, but they're all obviously super positive. And the one other thing I'll add is sometimes I'll do this recruit reaction type deal where I just reach out to these recruits. It's mostly just the commits, right? Because if Notre Dame's playing Florida State, like that it's usually a big game. This year it wasn't so much, but a lot of times it's I won't hit up the targets because they didn't watch the game, right? The commits are typically the ones watching the game. Everyone and their brother watched the Notre Dame Clemson game, Patrick.
Game of
So
the year.
yeah, it was the game of the year. So it had that. So that's why I reached out to everyone, and I didn't get one response. Actually, the only response I got back was from a commit who had a game on Saturday night. But everyone else that reached back out to me watched the game. There wasn't any. Oh, I didn't get to watch the game. Everyone was tuning in to that game on primetime, Patrick. So overall, you know, just a really productive night for Notre Dame on and off the field.
Yeah, like Mike said, go to blueandgold.com if you're already subscribed and check all that out. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? And if you're listening to this on podcast form, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening to us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our YouTube channel for much more content there. You can follow us on Twitter. Follow me at Patrick Engel _. That's ENGEL. And you can follow Mike at Rivals _Singer. Please, if you'd be so kind, rate and review the podcast. If you like what you hear, leave us 5 stars and nice comments. We'll love you forever. So, Mike, like you said, it's one of those kind of wins where, yeah, it's not just, okay, some day game against, whatever ACC team that they beat up, even if it's impressive. Like take the Pitt game a couple weeks ago. Like, yeah, you want to win by 42. That's a good win. But all right, how many people or targets who have lots of schools they're interested in or tuning in for that game. Probably not that many. So
Right.
again, if you were to have done something like you said, you're hitting up the commits there. But no, this one like big deal. Everybody's watching, and obviously Notre Dame wanted to win that because of what it meant for this season. But just the fact that they won it here only helps in the sense of what kind of impression you can put on everybody else. And look, you've covered this long enough, and I've covered recruiting previously too, where like okay, the wins and losses in one game makes a lot less difference for the actual recruits than it does for fans or even from us as a media perspective. But yeah, I mean, there's no way to look at this and say it doesn't help. And I mean, look, what's the narrative that I'm sure comes up when these guys are getting recruited, or if they just can't help but follow or watch college football of what does Notre Dame do in these big moments and things. And if it's the thing that had persisted and whatnot was they hadn't been able to finish a job. And well, if they were fighting that on the recruiting trail or whatever, well, here's your evidence. There's your sale pitch if that was something they've been trying to convince certain targets of. So yeah, no way around it that this was a good all around day for Notre Dame in the recruiting trail.
You opened with that, Patrick, saying that the recruits don't react as much to one game as much as fans and media do. I actually said that, or the question came up on our live show with Mike Goolsby. Make sure if you don't listen to that podcast that we post afterwards, or if you're not tuning in, what are you doing? If you haven't watched it back, you can still watch it back. Go to our YouTube page, search Blue and Gold Illustrated on YouTube. You can find it. It was awesome, hour-long show with Goolsby. We started recording it 15 minutes, as we always do, right after the Clemson game. So you got our live, raw reaction there. Well, I had a question about how this impacts recruiting. And one comment I said was just that, Patrick, what you just said. And Goolsby said, well, hang on, Mike. I'm the former five-star recruit, which he was in the class of 2000. Mike Goolsby was a five-star per ESPN. And he said, if you were in there, like if you were in Notre Dame Stadium that night, then a win like that really does go a long way. And the USC game last year, Patrick, had a vibe that would have been somewhat comparable. Like if this was with 80,000 people, Clemson game, the Clemson game this year would have been bigger vibe, bigger atmosphere than the USC game last year, but still comparable. Like the USC game 2019, Notre Dame had over 100 recruits, so many commits. Rocco Spindler was on campus that day. Notre Dame's 2021 offensive line commitment. Of course, at that point he was not. I think that visit went a long, long way to him picking Notre Dame. I think they really took the lead at last October and never really gave it back to Michigan or Penn State. So I say all that to say, like, and I agree with Goolsby, if you were in that game or in that stadium for that game, really could have gone a long way. But I agree with you in the other sense of it really helps, and it's a strong recruiting pitch for the coaches. But I just think recruits, they pick schools for things that maybe fans don't think about. Like fans are just thinking, well, this team's losing. Well, then the coach can be like, hey, we're losing. We need you to turn us around,
Right.
Or I think one thing that can be overblown sometimes, not all the time, because Blake Fisher's starting to prove this wrong, or he's the exception, is commits recruiting other guys. Package deals aren't really a thing unless you're siblings or related or that kind of thing, or grew up together, literally, basically we're brothers in that sense. So I think so. There are some things that are overblown a little bit in
Absolutely.
recruiting, and so people are asking me, Mike, we're gonna flip Will Shipley, we're gonna flip Landon Tangwell from Penn State. Like
Yeah,
pump the brakes a little
let's
bit.
come back to planet Earth here. I mean,
We
yeah, it's
will
not
get
like
in.
Olaf is
We
gonna
will we
gonna
will get
do that.
into some flip watch, Patrick, but not yet.
It is not gonna be Will Shipley. I think we can just put that to bed right now. Or yes, it's easy to overreact, and it's like, oh well, that team lost a big game. Let's just take all their recruits. I mean, it doesn't happen in droves like everybody thinks. And look, that's going to be, fodder and for boards all over the country after big games like this, and that's all in good fun. But yes, it's not going to be a thing that all of a sudden like, hey, Now we can just get these 5 kids we weren't going to get before. And
Right.
especially like maybe this is the one thing you wish you could have seen is have the guys in the stadium. You couldn't this year for obvious reasons. But I mean, if that's the one thing you're lamenting from Saturday, you're in a pretty good spot. And yeah, very, very far down the list of things on Saturday you'd be concerned about.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, let's pump the brakes on flipping Will Shipley or anybody who's committed to some school that's struggling. And what I've found, and you just kind of get the sense, is recruits' biggest thing that turns them off is instability. I don't think Clemson is not stable right now.
Yeah.
Like coaching staff's not going anywhere. They're still good. So and at least in Will's case, they're close to home and whatever. I'm sure that was a factor in it. I'm not remember off the top of my head here, Mike, but not to get too far down that off ramp.
We've gone
But
there.
anyway, yeah, yeah, we've been there enough. But yes, all in all, good day for Notre Dame. Was there anything specific recruit reactions or whatever that stood out to you or anything here as we get more into specific kids?
Yeah, well, one thing I probably want to move to, Patrick, is that although you couldn't get into the game, there were still, what was that, 5 Notre Dame commits on campus. So we'll run through this real quickly. You had Blake Fisher, who I just mentioned, 5-star from Avon, Indiana.
You knew he was going to be there.
Of course. So
I'm not missing that.
he was in South Bend. Mitchell Evans, tight end commit from Wadsworth, Ohio, and Justin Walters from Chicagoland, Bolingbrook High School, safety. So they all linked up, watched the game together. You had Jaden Thomas, 4-star wide receiver commitment for the Fighting Irish from down here in Atlanta where I live. He went up there. He's got connections to Notre Dame. I don't know who he was. He wasn't with those guys. He was with maybe the Asaf family, but he was up in South Bend this past weekend for the game. Nolan Ziegler, he was in South Bend as well. He went over from Grand Rapids with some of his teammates. I can't remember the name of the former player that they saw while in South Bend, but former Irish players in town or lives in town that they were able to link up with. So pretty neat thing that these guys weren't even able to get into the game, but yeah, those commits, just wanted to see the atmosphere around campus, even in a limited capacity.
So getting more into guys who were there to visit. One big one remaining target here was one of the bigger ones left on the board for 2021, linebacker out of Hawaii, Kahanu Kia. He made the trip all the way from Hawaii, South Bend, on his own dime. He figured, and I know we talked about this before, that was going to be a good sign. From the sound of it, you think so afterwards. So, yeah, take us through what that visit did with him and where you see that recruitment going from here.
Yeah. So there was a padded camp. I think I've mentioned this in a recent podcast. Certainly have in articles at blueandgold.com. Padded camp for guys who are not playing this fall due to the pandemic. So Hawaii's one of those states that's not playing. So he found it very useful to go to this camp and put the pads on. And his dad was also a host of the camp, so that certainly helped his reasoning for wanting to do that. So he did that. Went to Utah's campus while in state there. He also has family there, so made sense for him to just kind of do the whole swing of the state there, see family, visit campus, do this camp. Well, he could have just gone home, but he decided to fly to South Bend. I know he didn't get a non he did not get a non-stop flight. Is that words are
Yeah,
escaping me?
I don't think anyone's flying from Salt Lake City to South
Yeah,
Bend.
so I know he had a couple connecting flights, but made it there Thursday night, left on Sunday, and the reviews from him. Make sure to check that article out on blueandgold.com, where that Kananu Kia really enjoyed his visit. 6'2", 205-pound, 3-star linebacker. I think he's much better than a low 3-star, but that's a different podcast for a different day. But by all accounts, he and his dad really loved Notre Dame, South Bend. I think you could speak to this, Patrick. The weather was very conducive for a young man from Hawaii.
Very good timing to not have a cold November day.
Yeah,
Great, yeah. Summer like weather, which if you're trying to get a Hawaiian kid. Doesn't help. Obviously, you can look at Manti Te'o's official visit a dozen years ago, sitting there in a parka, having to leave the stadium halftime. It wasn't a detriment in the end, but if you're trying to get him, I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so great weather there. And again, we're in a dead period due to the pandemic, so can't see the coaches face to face, can't get into the facilities, can't sit down and eat with the coach, like all those things that happen during a normal visit. Just so that stinks. But look, he didn't get to do that at Utah. This week he's going to. I don't know the specific dates. All I know is he's supposed to be going back to Hawaii at the end of the week, but stopping in at Stanford and UCLA. So those are his top four schools: Notre Dame, Stanford, UCLA, Utah. He'll have visited all four of them in a 2 week span. So his recruitment is coming down to the wire. For our YouTube audience, we have his player card pulled up, and it says Future Cast 100% for Notre Dame.
Think you
This
might have
guy
something to say here, Mike.
put the pick in for the Fighting Irish on Tuesday morning. I have the details of why I put that in, and kind of where I see his recruitment going from here. That's all at blueandgold.com.
So he'd be the second linebacker in the class, and I know, I mean, that's initially thinking what 7, 8 months ago, were they going to take anybody? Prince Kali obviously changed that. What do you think was the reasoning here for wanting to go get a second? I mean, I know we kind of had broken down the remaining spots in the class here, and all right, one of them was linebacker, defense, whatever. He picked up the offer. What was it? Late summer, early fall, somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean, what was it here that was it more second linebacker in the class, or we like this kid, let's go get him?
Both. Yeah, I was going to say those are the two things. They love Kahanu Kia. I mean, they offered another kid from Punahou, of course. Man, I should know this 100%. Manti Te'o's
Yeah,
school,
this
of
is high school,
course.
yes.
So they offered Teva Tafides a defensive end from Punahou in over the summer, and
2022. Yep.
yep, and then 3 months later they offered Kia. So I'm sure. Look, the scouting continued, and man, like who's this linebacker? So I think he was too good to pass up. As well as look, Notre Dame took four linebackers in 2018, four in 2019, zero in 2020, and one in 2021 at that point. Well, man, if I'm the staff, maybe we should not just do big log jams and then none. So let's space it out a little bit more. So I think that's part of the reason. But even if Kia doesn't join Notre Dame's class, adding Colley's just monstrous. Maybe one of these safeties eats their way into a linebacker, and then um, Kia, whether they take Kia or I should say whether Kia comes in or not will depend or will impact how many 2022 linebackers they take because they already have Nolan Ziegler committed, who's a rover, maybe Buck later in his career, and they're in the mix for some really good ones. So if they don't land Kia, maybe they take three or four in the next cycle. But if they do, maybe it's more to the 2 to 3 range.
Yeah, it's kind of like a tale as old as time in recruiting, right? You go watch a kid on film or watch a school's defensive film looking for one guy, and then if he plays in, it's like, oh, well, who's that guy? We got to take a look at him.
Right.
So, I mean, it's yeah, and like you said, Teva Tafiti, the 2022 linebacker out of their previous target. Mike, was he among the dozens or scores or whatever term whatever you want to put on it recruits that reacted and you were talking with in the during and after the Clemson game?
Yeah, glad you brought that up. Yeah, Tafiti was messaging me during the fourth quarter. Like the next mornings when I reached out to all the recruits to say, hey, what'd you think about the game? I want to do a story and all that stuff. Tafiti was just reaching out to me, messaging me, and I was like, that's so cool. I mean, it's I don't. It must mean that he likes me, and I don't know. Like I
Don't
don't
get ahead
work.
of yourself.
I'm trying to make sure like I don't work for Notre Dame, but he associated me with Notre Dame and was just so excited. He was texting Kia during the game to they were just going back and forth and were super excited. So uh, yeah, Teva Tafiti. Look, this Hawaiian pipeline is just going strong. We even talked about Titus Makayo-Watamalala, four-star athlete who Notre Dame's also pursuing in the 2021 class. So just, I mean, Brian Polian is he knows what he's doing down there.
So on the linebacker theme here, but in 2022, I know another one of the visitors, Langston Patterson, linebacker from the Nashville area, one that Clark Lee has been doing a lot of the work in himself. 2022 kid, he was on campus for the game. Mike, tell us what do we got to know there? I mean, I know this has been one of the earlier 22 linebacker offers, but what did this do in terms of Notre Dame and where things stand with him?
Yeah, so the Irish offered him back in June, and Nick Lazinski, defensive analyst, and basically Clark Lee's right hand man on the recruiting front at linebacker, have done a good job in this recruitment. Patterson's brother is Kane Patterson, who plays mainly special teams for the Tigers right now. He's in his sophomore season, and I believe he saw the field a good bit for Clemson in special teams on Saturday. So Clemson gets a lot of tickets for the games, right? And it's just family. Is that right, Patrick?
Yes,
So
Clemson visiting player families, and in this case, it was Clemson, are allotted some tickets to get into the stadium.
so Langston was one of them. So he got and he posted a picture after the game, and I didn't know about it. I didn't know that Langston Patterson was going to be on campus until he texted me like Saturday morning or afternoon, him in a Notre Dame shirt in front of Touchdown Jesus. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about this that you can go to the game because your brother, your family. And I was kind of joking with him like, hey, you're gonna wear that jersey or that shirt during the game? He said, I was
Uh,
put on a sweatshirt. So he was telling me that when his brother wasn't on the field and Notre Dame was on defense, he was rooting for Notre Dame. So he had a great time on campus. That was his first time there. If Clemson offers, they're going to be tough to beat considering his brother's there. But I mean, I might say that Notre Dame's in the driver's seat in that recruitment. Tennessee is a couple hours away, and they've offered. But um, I mentioned there's a lot of 2022 linebackers that Notre Dame's looking good for, and Langston Patterson's one of them.
yeah, it worked out pretty well for Notre Dame, where all right, the kid's coming up here with his family who's in because of the visiting team, but it turns into a campus visit and a mega game and everything that in that sense helps Notre Dame's chances. So kind of a luck of the draw or convenient thing that helped him out. But I mean, look, it's not like you said, it's not like Notre Dame needed this to all of a sudden make them a legit contender in Langston's eyes. This is one that they've been doing a lot of work on for a while.
I like him. He's a good player. He's currently unranked by rivals, so that will obviously change. But he's good player. 15 offers. I like this offer by Notre Dame. I think it'd be a good player. He's doing some good things there at Christ Presbyterian Academy in Nashville. So he's one to keep an eye on for sure.
So back to 2021, you touched on and you mentioned him, Titus Mikhail Altamalala. You have to figure that he's going to have a spot if he wants to take it. But elsewhere, seems like there's a little bit more activity going on here. I mean, we had just talked about Kahano Kia. You figure again, if he wants to hop in the class, that will happen. Notre Dame will take him. But what else do we have to know here? I mean, we discussed the breakdown of what those final four spots could look like, where it's all right, just Titus because he's Titus at defense or receiver or whatever. Kia because okay, we could use a second linebacker and we like him. That leaves you with a couple more, 1 to 2 more. One of those, if not the last remaining of those, is best player available. So it sounds like Mike, they're looking at a certain position here with at least a couple of those guys, and specifically where the latest offer for the 2021 class went out. So, dish on new 2021 running back offer. Byron Cardwell out of San Diego. What do we need to know there? And in particular, is this a thing of Notre Dame wants a second running back, or we like this kid, let's go pursue him? What's kind of left here as far as hinted at a flip watch and whatnot of other 2021 spots that had just been kind of an abstract idea but are now kind of coming into the fold of, all right, we've got an idea of what those positions and players and targets are going to be, at least a little more of an idea than we had last time we recorded here.
Man, that was a you got me like four questions there. I got a lot to say. Yeah, so let's just cover first kind of the remaining spots. So you have Jameer Smith leave the football team,
Right,
and
right.
Jafar Armstrong move to running back.
Yeah,
So I think,
necessitating a need, yes, or
yeah,
at least opening spots, if nothing else.
yeah. I mean, right now you have three scholarship running backs, if I'm not mistaken, and Kyron Tyree and Sibo Flemister, and then of course you have Logan Diggs coming in, so that would be four for next year. They're all returning on paper, but you need more, right? If Sibo is older than Tyree and Kyron in terms of eligibility, then might he want to go look and be the number one guy? I don't have any inside information there. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a possibility, as everything is a possibility in college football. So with Kia, I want to mention real quick. I think that was really a thing of we love this kid, and we could also use another linebacker. But if Kia
Right,
doesn't go to Notre Dame, I don't think they're going to go after any other linebackers unless they just find another kid they fall in love with. With
right.
running
That's my
back, I want to say it was more of we have these transfers. Let's go find a guy, but we're not just going to offer somebody for the sake of taking a second running back, right? So with Kia, it was more of we love Kia. With this, it was more of we need a second back. But Byron Cardwell is a guy that Notre Dame started reaching out to in mid October. I mean, this is the number 234 player nationally, number 23 player in California, number 13 back in the land, and had some big offers. LSU, Michigan, Florida, Florida State are schools that have offered him 21 offers so far per his rivals profile. And he hasn't picked up an offer until Notre Dame offered him on Monday since July. And that's a long time to go for a four-star prospect. Usually, if a kid hasn't really cut down his list, you would see some trickle in there. But he hasn't played his senior season, and a lot of like running backs, you take one, maybe two for most schools. So if schools fill up, like does LSU have a spot for him right now? They got a back already. And Corey Kiner from Cincinnati. So I don't know where he really stands with his recruitment. The last I've heard is that he might wait until February. And I know that Notre Dame Impact offered him. I know that Lance Taylor has done a good job already in this recruitment, and that he and his family and his high school coach have been impressed with Lance Taylor in just a short period of time. But it's we still don't have visits, Patrick. So it's so tough to typically be like, all right, we offered, let's get you up on the next flight, next weekend we can. That's not in a dead period. Well, we've been in a dead period since the middle of March, and it's not ending anytime soon. The dead period's extended through the end of December, and signing day, the early signing day at least, is in mid-December. I believe it's 16th to the 18th. So he would have to either take a trip if he really needs to see Notre Dame. You'd have to take a trip, just walk around like some of these guys have done, or you commit without visiting. So we'll see what he does, and make sure to lock in at blueandgold.com for coverage on Byron Cardwell. Tuesday night we'll have some information on him and Lucky Charms.
So you laid out there kind of the one upside of, all right, maybe this is just a situation where Notre Dame just outlasted a lot of those other offers. We've talked about that with other guys and had talked about it last time with Donovan Edwards, the running back out of Michigan. But so yeah, still you have some obstacles to overcome there with, I mean, he's got to come from San Diego to visit on his own in all likelihood, right? I mean, I don't think we're getting out of this dead period anytime soon. So if you're looking at taking a second 21 running back, just like you said, probably going to expand the board, or at least look at expanding the board at some point, whether that's now or in January or whatever, beyond the Byron Cardwell late offer. Anything else, or other names, or whatever, that, or is this just kind of a one-off offer for now?
Well, you mentioned Donovan Edwards and top 100 player from West Bloomfield. I mentioned him on the gold standard for you guys. I will talk about him a little bit. The latest I've heard, so Notre Dame's in his top seven. Everyone's been talking about Michigan and Georgia and Oklahoma for him, and Notre Dame's kind of been in that second or third tier amongst his top schools. Well, he put out the top group, but otherwise he has not been focused on recruiting. He's just not. I don't think he's being very communicative with schools, if that's how I say that word.
Yeah.
He's basically said once the season's over, that's when I'm going to focus on recruiting. So we'll kind of see when that happens. He's in a playoff run there in the Detroit area, so I think maybe once the season ends, who knows where some of these coaching staffs are, with schools he's considering. Like, who really knows where maybe X school fills up and now they're not really. So you don't know. Yeah, I've said this. I don't feel great with Notre Dame's chances for Donovan Edwards, but at the same time, the longer it goes, I feel like the better. Other guy we got to talk about is Audric Estime from Montvale, New Jersey, St. Joseph's. Currently a Michigan State commit, listed by Rivals at 5'11", 210 pounds, number 215 player in the country, number 10 running back, number 5 player in the Garden State. Notre Dame has not offered him. I would not be surprised if they offer him. Maybe you're listening to this and they already have offered him. Again, blueandgold.com. I'm going to say that till I'm blue in the face. Make sure to go.
Eyeball emojis.
Yep, exactly. So he's committed to Michigan State. If Notre Dame offers him, I'd keep an eye on him. I think that, and man, I've spent a good bit watching his tape. Patrick, I'm looking forward to seeing what you think when you get to really watch his as well. I see a little Brandon Jacobs in him, and that's I don't really do player comparisons like that. It's just a really difficult thing to do. But if
I'm
Brandon
just
Jacobs,
bad with them.
I'm sorry, Patrick.
I'm just as bad with them. Yes. But
If
anyway.
if Brandon Jacobs, because he's like a 6'4" running back, right?
Yeah, he's like 6'4", 260, a linebacker playing running back. Do you get that
But
same kind of vibe here?
if Audric or if Brandon Jacobs were smaller, then you just see this big bowling ball type dude, and he's listed at 5'11". I want to check on that. I think he might be closer to 6', 6'1", and 220 maybe. I mean, this might be an older measurement there, but you just see this big dude running through, and he's on stretch plays. I remember Brandon Jacobs watching him beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It's just like, holy crap, he's this big, but he's also faster than everybody too. So I kind of get a little Brandon Jacobs vibes, just a little bit, yeah. So I like him. Again, Notre Dame offers. What did we talk about earlier with Keith Miles from St. Peter's Prep? He knows, like, there's just a Notre Dame friendly area, and I believe Notre Dame has a player from St. Joseph's on its roster. It's just these big Catholic schools in New Jersey, the really elite academic programs there in the Garden State, they're just Notre Dame friendly. So the transition from Catholic school in New Jersey to Catholic school in Indiana, it's not that bad. We've even had Kyle Hamilton say in his press conference a couple weeks ago, I believe it was for the Georgia Tech game. What did he say about going from Atlanta Marist to Notre Dame, Patrick?
Marist is harder than Notre Dame.
Like, wow.
Yeah, wow. But it speaks to the thing of, Catholic school kids liking, Catholic school, college, and Notre Dame in particular. So, yeah, it doesn't hurt here at all. And when you talk about the stretch plays and estimate on stretch plays when you watch him, and this big dude who can make them work and is fast in there. Well, guess who runs a lot of stretch plays? Notre Dame. Guess what produced the first touchdown of Saturday's game? Stretch play.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least in terms of that, and just kind of going off of what you said here, if he's comfortable in those type of situations, you think at least the fit is good from what we've seen of Notre Dame's offense this year.
Patrick, I need to throw this has nothing really to do with this show or recruiting, but I haven't I
Just how like a champion podcast. It wouldn't be if we didn't go somewhere completely off the rails. Let's do it.
so you mentioned the Clemson game, so it's on topic. It's pertinent. I posted it on the message board, and it just kind of came to me, and I was like, man, I'm not really gonna have a great opportunity to say this in a live show or podcast or anything, so I'm doing it now. everyone's talking about, well, Clemson didn't have Trevor Lawrence, right? And we're all saying, well, DJ Uyunglele is amazing too, right? I really don't think there's that big of a drop off. I think DJ
Yeah,
is
he was
probably, he's already probably a top. I mean, seriously, think about who the best quarterbacks in the country are. He's probably a top seven, at least top 10 quarterback in the country, right? Because Ian Book is probably in that discussion. I think even Notre Dame fans would say DJ Uyunglele is better. So, um, at least from a talent
the
perspective.
raw tools are hard to top,
Yeah.
and they were on display.
So we're talking about FSU win from 27 years ago is the biggest one since then. Well, if you look at this one 27 years down the road, you're going to think, and looking back at the Irish win over Clemson, you're not going to really care that you're not even going to think about that because guess what? DJ Uiagalelei might be a better pro quarterback than Trevor Lawrence is. You know, like DJ is that freaking good. So
Be a coveted player. Well, I'll leave it at that. I don't know if I'll go better than Trevor Lawrence, but
it's
I am thinking he will be remembered as like that dude was a star in college,
oh yeah,
and
dude, he's gonna play in the NFL for 15 years. You know, Trevor Lawrence is well. Both of those guys are going to be. I mean, both of those are the best like two quarterback recruits I've seen in I don't know past 5 years or so. I remember seeing Trevor when he was a sophomore. Like man, who's this? Who's Sunshine? You know, just Sunshine. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. That listen, you're 20 years from now, whatever you think about this game, it's going to be there's going to be no asterisk because DJ is going to be such a good pro, and he obviously he's going to be really good in college. We've already seen that, but that's just my little sidebar, Patrick.
yeah, I mean, I made my feelings known on that the entire week leading up to the game, where it's not going to be a thing where asterisks, tainted, discount, because they're not going to have a quarterback problem. And well, they didn't. So I've expounded on that for at various places on the interwebs and podcasts. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. But yes, I mean I completely agree.
Notre Dame controlled both lines of scrimmage. That would not have changed if Trevor Lawrence is in the game.
No, no, and look, they still had to score on Clemson's defense no matter what, and well, they put up 47 points. I know double overtime, but still, like that had to happen too, and it didn't.
Back to
So
recruiting.
one more recruiting note here before we wrap up. New 2022 offer out of Indiana, in-state kid, Indianapolis area, I think. Caden Curry, defensive lineman, big-time kid. I know one who's gotten a lot of those Big Ten offers and regional offers and whatnot. But Notre Dame throwing its hat in the ring here. What do you think is going to happen here, Mike, or at least what's your reaction to this one and kind of the skinny on Caden at this point in his recruitment?
Yeah, it was one of those where you just felt like it was a matter of time, and I'm like, why haven't they offered yet? Like, look, if there's some kid from Texas who's a big time kid Notre Dame offers later or whatever it may be, then you know is what it is. But a kid in Notre Dame's backyard that's as good and as highly ranked and has the offers and everything as Caden Curry, why? You know, like you have to wonder why that offer. Did
Yeah, sometimes you just get curious as to like, all right, what were they waiting on? And look,
right?
it could be a very good reason, but those are just the things that we don't know as far as
Yeah,
the minutia of every single one of these kids. But yeah, whether it's asking critically or just being straight up curious, and this is straight up curious, me, like, yeah, just what made them wait? I don't know. It's
my
because it's what we see on the field.
my guess, Patrick, is that is he an end or is he a tackle is the
Yeah,
thing. But with
and
Notre
that's a lot
Dame,
of times what it is.
but
And it,
oftentimes with Notre Dame, Patrick, it's this guy's really freaking good at football. Let's get him in. Like who
yeah,
cares? Like let's get him.
right,
So
right,
I see both sides of it. Caden Curry
yeah,
though,
as
uh,
do I.
let's go down his offer list, Patrick. Alabama, Clemson, Florida, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas. Not that Notre Dame's going to offer people based on the other offers or what his ranking is. Number 35 player in the 2022 class, number 4 strong side defensive end. I think he's going to be a solid defensive tackle, that 3 tech. But yeah, the offer went out. I talked to him on Monday night. I believe he got the offer Sunday. I talked to him Monday night, and Excited about the offer. He's been to Notre Dame twice. He went to the Boston College game in 2019 and was at a junior day in February. So he's been a couple times, but Ohio State's the leader right now. And if he goes to Ohio State, what are Notre Dame fans going to say? Well, it's because you offered late. And I think that's a fair thing. I mean, Mike Elson and the coaching staff can't really get out in front of it publicly and say anything, like defend themselves, because
Right.
coaches aren't allowed to speak publicly about recruits until they sign, and you don't really talk about other kids who sign elsewhere that you didn't get. You don't really do that, so um, it's just one of those things. Yeah, but he's a good player. Still think Notre Dame has a shot with him. When I talked to him, I asked him about this. Like, look, it's not a late offer because you're in your junior season, right? I mean, you have
Right.
13 months until you sign. But if you compare to, well, he has
Other timing.
21
Right.
other offers and he has those big offers that everyone like Alabama already offered him. Like, so maybe as an academic thing, like so Notre Dame's different in some of those senses, but um, I still think the Irish have a good shot, but I would say Ohio State is the team to beat.
All right. Let's wrap it up, Mike. All kinds of good stuff in here as you hinted. Maybe kind of a exciting or interesting or at least more active finish to the 2021 class than we might have anticipated, a couple of months ago or even sometime in October. So a lot left to unfold here. And we're less than 50 days out from signing day right now. It's or maybe
36,
closer
I
to a
think.
month, really. Yeah.
I think
So
36.
it's a lot of stuff can happen between now and then, and from the sound of it, yeah, might be a few things to watch here. So appreciate you guys listening. Again, if you're listening to us via podcast format, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for much more YouTube content. Follow us on Twitter at Patrick Engel _. Follow Mike at rivals _singer. We'll talk to you again soon. Till then, take care.